What is up, and welcome to another episode of Draft is in Session. Will Decker here with the man, the myth, the legend, the madman, the maddest man west of the Mississippi, my brother, Jamal Madni. What is going on, my man?
Will the thrill, my brother from another mother, excited to do this again. If Draft is in Session, this is going to be another fun episode for us, bro.
This is a incredibly fun one, and linebackers are just one of my favorite positions in football in general. But I was really looking into the depth of this draft, and there was like 7 or 8 guys that I really feel could start for NFL teams, and the more we do this, the more I push back on that weak draft talk that this was supposedly, and maybe it is at the quarterback position, but everywhere else is stacked with depth guys. And this linebacking group is fun as hell to watch. I got like 7 or 8 guys we can talk about, and with my top 5. So it's just a lot of dudes we can bring to light. How was the preparation for this linebacker podcast?
Thriller, very similar. There were kind of 7 guys that I really liked. But for me, there's kind of 3 that are a cut above everybody else. And then I think that there are another 3 that I think are very solid, strong prospects. Like you mentioned, I think have the ability to be starters on an NFL roster. And then there's one wild card in there that I really like. So those are kind of my 7.
I've got a wild card too, and we're going to get there. It's my 3rd best linebacker on the board. So I'm excited to see where you go with this. I'm pretty sure I know who your top 2 linebackers are. I'm going to give you the floor, and I want to hear, when all was said and done, Madman, you ran the tape, you ran the combine results, even though most of them are pointless, as we pointed out in many other podcasts. Who is your number 1 linebacker?
Will, I might surprise you on this. I might not. But for me, what jumped off when you sort of combine what jumped off on tape, what was overall production last year, the measurables and the intangibles, you put it all together. For me, it's Devin Lloyd. I think that he is an absolute stud. This guy is a different animal, okay? 6'3", 235, obviously ran a 4.6, 640, but it just goes so much beyond that. I mean, you talk about the production. It was absolutely insane. 111 tackles this year, 8 sacks, 4 interceptions. I mean, the most dominant, I know we talk about, Thibodeau and what that ceiling is and that upside, and no question about it. And obviously we've had our episode on defensive ends and what have you. But in terms of who was the most dominant player in the Pac-12 conference on the defensive side, it was Devin Lloyd last year, no question about it. And what just sort of separates him is, a couple of things. He got off to such an incredible start to his season. First 3 games, 3 consecutive 10-plus tackle games. But to me, this guy can impact all 4 levels of an offense. And so when you talk about behind the line of scrimmage in terms of disrupting the quarterback with sacks and QB pressures, as well as sort of lateral and flat plays, when you talk about run stuffing at the point, at the line of scrimmage, and sort of being tough and being physical there. Then when you talk about pass coverage in that sort of intermediate line of scrimmage to 9-10 yards area, the guy was an absolute monster there. And then he had some plays where even 15 yards down the field, he was deflecting passes and sort of leading tips to other guys. And his ball skills are just absolutely out of control. I mean, the 4 interceptions that he had, I remember the game against Stanford. I mean, he snatches that ball out of the air and just sort of falls into the end zone. Others where it was absolutely sensational in terms of even his catch radius as a linebacker was insane. And then when you couple that with the fact that you can put him on the edge and have him be an edge rusher in certain packages, and you can play that sort of hybrid linebacker defensive end slot a la Von Miller, I mean, you have an elite prospect here that is an absolute game changer defensively. And so for me, he was number 1 in my mind, no question about it.
He was my number 1 too. And I think everything you said, he just checks every single box. Pass coverage, you want that? He held receivers at a 50 or a quarterback rating of a 50% when targeted. 4 interceptions, like you said. You want sacks? He's blitzing. He got 8 sacks last year, made incredible plays. 100-plus tackles, which for college, you have to remember, that's 13 games. That's way harder to do at the college level. And just the thing that stood out to me above all the other linebackers is he has the highest football IQ from that position. He is the general of that defense. He knows where everything's going. Everything runs through him. Every team knew they had to prepare for Devin Lloyd, and every game Devin Lloyd showed out, and most of the time came out as the victor in those battles. I mean, this guy, what he was able to put together this year, one of the best linebacking seasons, probably since those Clay Matthews, Maluga teams, honestly, I can't remember a more impactful Pac-12 linebacker than Devin Lloyd. Pass coverage, the blitzing, the straight ahead tackling. He was ranked in all those areas above 80 in PFF, which is a very, very good grade according to PFF. So Devin Lloyd was my guy. And you add up all the production, but it's the IQ and the instincts. He is so gifted in those areas. And that's what you want from your linebacker. You want a cerebral linebacker that is able to make all the plays over the field. So I had him over a hair over our next guy. I'm taking it you had Nakobe Dean number 2. Is that correct?
Will, I had Nakobe Dean. It was sort of tied for number 2 for me. For me, it was between Nakobe Dean and Christian Harris. Those were my 2 guys right immediately after. And if someone like a Devin Lloyd could affect all 4 levels of an offense, these guys can affect kind of the 3 levels, right? Behind the line of scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage in the point of attack, and then up until it's time to move the chains in terms of pass coverage. What I loved about Nakobe Dean is obviously that vaunted Georgia defense. He was essentially the captain of that team. The 72 tackles, 6 sacks, 2 interceptions. He had that glorious pick 6, 53 yards in the game against Florida. He was absolutely sensational. 11 tackles and a sack against Tennessee. 7 tackles and a sack against Michigan. He was just absolutely incredible all the way across the board. And I think just the variety that you can do with Dean in terms of different packages. He's, run blitz, pass blitz, his lateral quickness to be able to blow up bubble screens, screen plays, and sort of just lateral throws. His ability to be so versatile in that intermediate pass game as well, and just be a glue to any sort of a slot receiver potentially even, and a tight end. Absolutely phenomenal. He was the captain of that defense and was absolutely sensational. And so for me, Dean was super, super duper, just not quite as super duper as Devin Lloyd. And I think it was tied with Christian Harris. And Christian Harris, another guy, 79 tackles, 5.5 sacks. I mean, the guy can really do it all for me. The 3 sacks against Georgia in the title game. His athleticism blew me away in terms of his lateral quickness, just the things that he could do, his agility. That's a word that you don't use a lot with the linebackers sometimes. And his just agility was out of control, where sometimes in some of these misdirection plays, he's going full speed one direction. He can stop, flip on a dime, and go that other direction and blow up a play, whether that's, forcing fumbles with running backs and quarterbacks, whether that's straight on blitzes, whether that's just straight up pass coverage. These 3 guys were just a cut above for me over the rest of the field.
I'm so glad you brought up both those dudes. Harris is actually my number 5 linebacker, so I'm excited to get to him in the future. Nakobe Dean, just an absolute track star at the linebacking position. Like, that is what comes to mind. This guy runs like a gazelle at 225 at the linebacking position. The only thing I could really find as a negative for him, he's 6 foot 225. But as I've always said, if you like a guy, he checks every box, but he's just slightly undersized, you just take the guy. It's going to work out. I don't think anyone was saying that with Aaron Donald coming through, as a slightly undersized defensive tackle. Just what Nakobe Dean does. And I was marveling at Devin Lloyd's passer rating that he held Pac-12 quarterbacks to. Nakobe Dean's was 30.7 quarterback rating when targeted. So this guy, and this is becoming kind of the standard of the linebackers. Like you look at the top 2 highest paid linebackers in the NFL today, it's Fred Warner, it's Darius Leonard. And what do they do well? They play the run, but they are as good in the pass game as anyone there is. And Nakobe Dean provides that. And I've got a comp for you, man.
And not to interrupt you, and please continue, but you have to be in today's NFL because it's that short passing game that's replaced the run game. Gone are the days that your running back is going to have 300, 350 carries. At most, a running back is going to be in the low 200s in terms of, straight up run carries. And it's that short passing game that's going to sort of offset those plays where you're not trying to go down the field, but you're just trying to stay in front of the chains. And so it's totally so much of the talk in the NFL today is how the passing game has revolutionized the quarterback position and how it has commoditized the running back position. But very little discussion is how this modern NFL has actually revolutionized the linebacker position more than arguably any other position on the field. Because if you cannot be elite in terms of pass defense in today's NFL, then guess what? You are a situational linebacker, and it's going to limit your ceiling on your impact in the NFL, your longevity in the NFL, and your ultimate payday in the NFL.
And, with Nakobe, the guy that screamed out to me, I know this because you were an NFL fan, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Derrick Brooks. This is what this guy screamed to me. Undersized linebacker. You mentioned the pick 6 he had against Florida. The pick 6 Brooks had in the Super Bowl against the Raiders. It was like side-by-side comparison. Lightning quick linebackers, great in the pass game. This is the next Derrick Brooks for me. I want to hear your comparison on that, but I thought that was a natural guy to say this is his prototype if he can reach that ceiling.
Ding, 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 ding. Will, congratulations. You just had the best comp of draft season. You win, okay? In the words of Kenny Smith, okay, in the 2000 slam dunk competition. It's over, ladies and gentlemen. It's over. Let's go home. Let's go home, ladies and gentlemen, with that comp. That was absolutely a phenomenal comp. And, the benefit of Dean of making that pick 6 is he didn't have Gruden in his ear, who, oh, by the way, coached the other team and told these guys exactly where to be. That famous mic of John Lynch basically saying halfway through the second quarter, have these guys run a play that we haven't practiced yet? But kidding aside, absolutely. I love the Derrick Brooks comparison. That was incredibly spot on. And again, it's the same argument that we've used in the past over Russell Wilson. It's the same argument we've used in the past of some shorter receivers in the slot. And
Calvin Austin. Your guy, Calvin Austin.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, sometimes NFL thinking can be so archaic. Dean is lightning fast. I mean, you're talking about in the 4.3s of the 40 time and, at that size. So the size to me does not matter as much, especially in today's NFL. The size sort of matters. I think a lot of people don't understand is, when you're throwing the ball downfield a little bit more, then it's sort of, it matters a little bit in terms of setup of the play. But when you're going sort of shorter distances, when you're doing more spread / old school West Coast concepts, it's really at that point of attack that you sort of understand misdirection of a play. So it's not necessarily, eye level with the quarterback that's most important, but it's reflex time, right? And the ability to change direction is really what you're looking for in a linebacker, more so than, line of sight sometimes. And so I think Dean is an incredible prospect because of that burst of speed as well and everything that you described.
What is up, Bruin Bible listeners? We interrupt this podcast to bring you our new deal that we have. We are excited to announce that we have partnered with a number of different sports books to give you the best options for all your betting needs. For our California listeners, betus.com is the perfect place to bet on the NFL draft, the NBA, or any sport that you are interested in. Get a 125% bonus on your first deposit with our link. If you live in a betting state, then be sure to check out our deal with DraftKings, FanDuel, or BetMGM. Plenty of free money out there with your first free deposit. In order to get our special deal, you have to type in Bruin Bible You have to click on the link located in the description or go to LAFB betting offers. Win big with these amazing promotions and bet safely. Now back to the podcast.
And I had it tied, Will, with Christian Harris, just because Harris, the agility, man. I mean, it was just unreal. His agility at the linebacker position really stood out to me as my kind of number 2.
And Christian Harris, to his credit, 3-year starter at Alabama. That is like the toughest program to get on the field. He was there bright and early, making plays for them for a while. He made Bruce Feldman's list. He power cleaned. My jaw dropped when I heard this. Power cleans 405 at 232 pounds. Like, that is just incredible strength from Christian Harris. 3 sacks in the national championship game, like you mentioned. He's up there in the terms of IQ for me. Like, if I'm looking for a linebacker to get an NFL playbook down, like immediately, he's near that Devin Lloyd range where it's like this guy might be the most smartest instinctual linebacker to couple with that incredible athleticism at the linebacking position. So Christian Harris near the top of my list too. Do you want to hear my third one? And please. I'm going to let you declare if this is fair or not, because when we look at the linebacking position, a lot of times, especially the outside linebacking position, we have guys like Von Miller and TJ Watt who are technically considered linebackers. Would you consider Nick Bonito an outside linebacker? Because I do.
You know, Will, it's so funny. Bonito's my number 5. Okay, so we're hovering right in the same place. I absolutely love Nick Bonito, and he's a hybrid, right? He's linebacker. You've got that versatility of being an absolute edge rusher. He's sort of a monster in terms of, this isn't a stat, but if it was, I would argue that Nick Bonito would be number 1 in the country, and that is percentage of plays, percentage of snaps that he's played in where he actually ended up in the backfield. And when you actually look at the film, I mean, you're talking about close to 50% of the time. I would argue it's between 40 and 50% of the time that regardless of where Nick Bonito started on the field, he was in the backfield by the end of the play, either directly disrupting that play or indirectly disrupting that play. And so Bonito was a guy for me that was, a top 5 guy. I didn't personally have him in that top 3, more so because of a lack of reps and sort of a lack of maybe identity of what is the primary position going to be. However, having said that, his versatility and his upside is off the charts.
And I'm so glad you brought up that point because my stats directly correlate to the point that you made, essentially his win rate. Here's the highest pass rush win rate for Power 5 edges in the history of PFF. Number 1, it's Nick Bosa at 25.9%, one of the most dominant defensive ends we've ever seen at the college level. Number 2 is Nick Bonito, 25.2%. Like, this guy was balling on a different level the last 2 win percentage years. And this couples his early win rate, so it downgraded a little bit. 2020, he was 28.6. Like, that's like batting like 380 in baseball. Like, that is, you're getting a hit nearly every time you come up to bat. In 2021, it was 27.3. So, I mean, he dominated the Big 12 in that stat. And just the explosiveness, he did have 19 sacks over these last 2 years. He also had 33 tackles for a loss, so he can play the run too. He's a disruptive player. And I think if we consider the TJ Watts, the Von Millers, the DeMarcus Ware's linebackers to some extent, we have to consider Nick Bonito that.
Yes.
And I'm glad we're very aligned on that. So, when I saw just the raw PFF stats, like, this is a stat guy's dream to add Nick Bonito to his team. And just the film we saw where he's beating it. He may have had the best film of anybody here. Like, I had to put him number 3. I just had to.
You're so right there because you have to sort of, I think what a lot of fans as well as a lot of NFL people sometimes need to do with statistics is you have to normalize those statistics given the context that you're in, right? 20 sacks in one situation may not mean 20 sacks in another situation. 15 touchdowns in one situation may not mean 15 touchdowns in another situation. The fact that Benito got 7 sacks in the Big 12 cannot be understated how significant that is, because the Big 12 is a conference that is designed to get the ball out quickly. Everybody is running spread. Everybody is running a derivative of the air raid. When you talk about release time and ball being out time for a quarterback of any conference in college football, the fastest of that is the Big 12. And so it's sort of virtual impossibility sometimes for a linebacker or a defensive end to get to the quarterback. So the fact that this guy's got 7 sacks in that context, okay, really is like 12 or 14 sacks in another traditional Power 5 conference. So we're sort of seeing this sort of aggregation of evidence of his dominance, whether that is through the win rate, whether that is contextualizing the sacks, whether that's watching the film and seeing how much he's in the backfield. And so his disruption, his dominance, coupled with his versatility, I think he's a steal. And he's going to be a value pick for folks that are really paying attention.
Yeah, and he may be used situationally, right? Because he is an edge rusher at his core. But it's just the dominance. Like, the dominance propelled him to number 3. Like, this guy, we didn't even mention this guy in the edge rushing draft thing, by the way. Like, I think we were saving him for the linebacking room, but I just, man, 6'3", 240, can move like that, has that step, uses his hands like lethal weapons against those tackles. I just couldn't get him below 3, man. I could not do it.
It's fair.
Yes. So we have gotten through our top 3 guys, Madman. I'm going to let you lead with number 4. Who do you got for me, man?
My number 4, Will, is Brandon Smith from.
Ooh, okay.
Brandon Smith from Penn State. Well, 6'3", 241, ran a 4.52. 81 tackles this year, 2 sacks. He had sort of a career high game this year with the 10 tackles in that battle against Michigan. But what I really saw about Brandon Smith is that there's 2 aspects to his game where he is absolutely elite at that sort of Dean, Lloyd, Harris level. It's just that not every aspect of his game is elite, okay, at that level. And the 2 aspects where he's really good, he is an incredible straight line blitzer. So, when you watch the film, this guy has incredible closing speed when he's blitzing. And whether that's sort of blowing up a run pass option from a spread perspective, whether that's going straight for the quarterback, he has done a lot of incredible plays in the backfield when he's blitzing, and he's an elite blitzer at the linebacking position. And he has an incredible ability to disguise that he's going to blitz. A lot of guys are sort of like track stars. They're sort of like leaning and ready to go. He has this incredible ability to sort of stay situational, stay in his base form, and then be able to blitz and really have that closing speed. And I think the second aspect of his game is he's very quick laterally. And so if you look at the highlights in the tape, the amount of bubble screens and quick balls out to the running backs, or any sort of screen play or short sort of passing game at or near the line of scrimmage, he was blowing it up laterally. And so again, I think it's a situational type of linebacker in the NFL. But if you're specifically looking for those 2 things, of having a great blitzing linebacker and someone who can sort of disrupt things laterally, Brandon Smith is a great pick.
I really like Brandon Smith. I like his potential. I had to leave him at number 6 for me because I think he relatively underperformed for his athleticism in college. I got to be honest. Like, he is phenomenally talented, and you see him in the backfield on a lot of these plays. He only had 2 sacks this past year, right?
Yeah.
81 tackles. He's a below average tackler, too, for my money in that size. Athletic freak, though. And, I think some team is just going to fall in love with him from his workouts. But to me, I think if you can add the work of becoming a great linebacker, get a good coaching staff to train him up with the athleticism you can't teach, right? He's 6'3", 250, runs the same 40 time as Nakobe Dean with 3 inches and 25 pounds on him. Like, the guy's a freak. but I just wanted to see more. I think that's what I came away with.
That's
And
fair.
he just kind of strikes me as an unfinished product at the end of the day.
That's fair. That's fair.
We could easily be looking back on this saying Brandon Smith was the best linebacker in this group if he's able to kind of match that out. But for me, that was just the one thing holding me back with Smith. I think he is a guy that if you're a combine guy, this is like your guy. Like, this is the dude. So Brandon Smith has a bright future. I'm excited to see what team he goes to. And the fear that I have is he goes to the Cowboys and links with his old linebacking partner, Micah Parsons. That would be unfair for the rest of the league. And, I think the Cowboys are moving on from Leighton Vander Esch, too. So that could be
as they should be, truthfully.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, he had a great rookie year, but he's really regressed since like offensive coordinators and quarterbacks have kind of, got the tape on him, so to speak. So Brandon Smith was close to my list. The guy that I got number 4, and I'm very high on this dude, Mumma. Mumma's my guy. And I really wanted to be like fair with this and look it out. I did. I looked into a bunch of different dudes, but just the production, the burst, the fact he's a middle linebacker calling the plays. I mean, we can look at the stats, 142 tackles, 3 picks. I mean, he's got kind of a ball hawk nature to him. He returned 2 of them to the house. I just love Mumma, and I just don't think he's getting enough credit coming into this draft. Chad Mumma is my guy. What do you think about my 4th linebacker on the board?
Will, I think it's a very fair assessment. I think it's astute. When is Will the Thrill not astute? That would be the breaking news, is when you're not astute. But, for me, Mumma didn't quite crack my top 6, top 7. But I understand where the value lies with him. And I think the ability to essentially captain a defense is a skill that is oftentimes overlooked. Guys, NFL GMs sort of just get in awe of just kind of the physical aspects or the productivity on film or just sort of a combination of things where they don't necessarily understand or value enough the cerebral aspects of the game. And oftentimes what I saw with Mumma is his understanding of the game is what enabled him to be in the right position to make the play, more so than even his athleticism. And so I think that is a skill that will translate at the next level in a great way. My only question/concern is, how does the athleticism translate to the next level? And if he is starting at too far a deficiency in that aspect, even if you have a tremendous understanding of the game, if the physical limitation is there just in terms of a lack of athleticism, like I could know, hey, the play is going here, but if I don't have the ability to get there, then it almost becomes sort of a moot point with Mumma. So that's kind of my question in terms of the jump in sort of the level difference a little bit. But I understand the value a great deal and just can't say enough good things about the kid.
Mumma's great. And, 6'3", 242, ran a 4.6, 340. I feel confident. I think it's going to translate. That's just my gut feeling. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of this guy, and I'll ride it out until it's, at the end of the table. I think we all have those draft prospects that we're willing to die on that hill. I just like him, and he had a PFF grade of 90. That's what you want to see. I think he checked a lot of boxes. Madman, who's your 5th favorite linebacker? Was it Bonito?
So my Bonito was sort of, Will, I had kind of like a top 3, then sort of like a next 3, and then like a 7th guy. So the last guy for me in the next 3 is also a little bit of a wild card and a guy who's not getting a lot of buzz, but he's sort of a freak athletically. And it's Sam Williams, Ole Miss. And
whoa!
And so this guy, at 265 to run a 4.46, and then when you sort of turn on the tape, he's 6'4". He had 12 and a half sacks at Ole Miss. And this guy is sort of a diamond in the rough to me. He's my wild card. Sam Williams is someone who, just absolutely can wreak havoc in the backfield. I think he's a combination linebacker, edge rusher. an absolute freak. He's raw. There's no question about that. And so technique at the next level. But if you actually sort of plotted, right, size and speed in terms of maximum size, maximum speed, Sam Williams is probably going to be in that top right quadrant, more so than just about any other linebacker prospect. And so the things that he can do really well, you can't teach. The things where there's some polishing that needs to be done is teachable. So he's a little bit of a project, but he's sort of my wild card. And I'm throwing Sam Williams in the hat just because you watch the tape, you watch the productivity, and this guy's built a little bit differently. And in terms of kind of the closing speed and things that he has, I'm sort of high on Sam Williams as my diamond in the rough.
Sam Williams, to your credit, was a name I was not expecting, but is kind of a guy that's deep in the draft that, you're right, is not getting the recognition he deserves. 12 and a half sacks this past year as an edge rusher. And we talk about Benito. Benito's 6'4", 6'3", 240. This guy's 6'4", 265, and he ran a tenth of a second. What was his 40 time?
4.46.
4.46. So he ran faster than Benito.
Yeah.
So at 260, I mean, this is what the combine is for, is finding these athletic freaks and then implementing into a system where they can learn kind of where to go with it. So Sam Williams, man, wow.
Well, a little bit of a let's roll the dice in Vegas, big money, blue here, black 32 on the roulette table, but let's spice it up a little bit. Sam Williams is kind of my diamond in the rough.
Hey, man, we need a new pair of shoes, so let's do it, man. Let's do it. I'm all in on the Sam Williams one. I've got a couple other linebackers that I really like, and we spoke to the one-dimensional linebacker, and to me, that's Leo Chenal. I'm very high.
He was my other guy. Yep.
Very, very high on Chenal. I just have loved this guy. He was actually the highest-ranked linebacker in all of PFF last year. He was 92.1, higher than Devin Lloyd, higher than Nakobe Dean, playing in a very competitive conference. 95 tackles, 8 sacks, really did his thing there. And the thing that stood out to me was Chenal put together a crazy pro day, and I'm a little weary on it because sometimes the clocks are a little faster, or I'll say, than at the other places. It's a little home field advantage type of thing there. But we're checking out his height. He's 6 foot. He's 250. He benched 34, 225. That is the most. That would have been the most in the history of the combine at his position. Dominated that. I don't know how this helps you, but a 40-inch vertical at 260 is incredible. And then he ran a 4.53 at 260. So, I mean, it's just like we just spoke about Sam Williams being a combine freak. Leo Chenal doing the same thing at 6'3", 260, right? So Chenal is a guy that if you're looking to get a run stopper, there's nobody better in this draft purely at the run than Chenal. I'm worried about the pass. I'm worried about those hips moving out and guarding, tight ends, maybe a receiver every now and then. But if you're looking for a situational guy and this guy falls to the third round, you got to take Leo Chenal, man. This guy
he was my seventh guy. Like, he was my sixth guy, and Williams was sort of my wild card. Completely agree with you. When you sort of look at him on film, this incredible nose for the football, and the guy's absolutely relentless. In these just slug it out Big Ten games that Wisconsin has played, every week in and week out, he was absolutely instrumental in, the success that they've had as a defense over the last couple of years. And again, this guy is elite, absolutely elite. He's second to none, really, from a linebacker prospect when you're talking about plays inside the tackle box, right? And so, that ability to stop the run, get to the quarterback, but when everything is sort of inside the tackle box, this guy's absolutely elite. The question is, when the play stretches beyond the tackle box and when it sort of goes beyond 5 to 7 yards, how is Chenal going to hold up? And that's kind of the question. And that's why he's sort of a 5, 6, or 7 type of ranked linebacker and not a 1, 2, or a 3. But if the game was played in an elevator, Chenal would, be one of the best linebackers on the board and just absolutely relentless. When you think about potentially the Steelers, when you think potentially about the Ravens, when you think about, teams that are all about stopping the run as core to their identity, this guy is a great rotational linebacker within that system. No question about it.
Love Chenal. And I do want to give you credit, too, on another guy. I went back and watched a lot of Georgia film for this because their linebacking group is just loaded with dudes. And you were one of the guys that really, spoke about Channing Tyndall. Yep. This is a guy that I really like. And, the stats, you have to throw out the stats when comparing these Georgia, linebackers, this defense, because it is like the equivalent of you're throwing a piece of meat to 3 pit bulls that are just going to chomp at it. You're not going to win every one of those, but boy, you're getting everyone was getting theirs on Georgia's defense. Jordan Davis, Trayvon Walker, guys like that. So you're competing with future first rounders to get tackles. That being said, 67 total tackles, 81 grade on PFF, 5.5 sacks, and is the fastest linebacker out of the 3 of those guys. He ran the 4.4s for his combine. I mean, this is a guy that's not tiny either. He's 6'2", 230. He's bigger than Nakobe Dean, ran a faster 40 time. I liked his tape better than Quay Walker, who's the other guy that they're talking up. I think Walker plays, just a little bit more looser, which for me is not what I want to see from my linebacker. Tyndall, sideline to sideline, I can feel confident this guy's got it covered. What do you think about Channing Tyndall?
Oh, I mean, Tyndall's one of my guys. He's got, I've got a soft spot in my heart for Channing Tyndall. The straight line speed is outrageous. I mean, and if anyone has any sort of question about it, just watch that Clemson Georgia season opener. I mean, if there's any question about Channing Tyndall's ability to disrupt an elite offense, just flip on that tape. And especially in today's NFL where so much happens laterally, he's a guy who's just absolutely an athletic freak. I love him to death. He's sort of in my top. He's a top 10 guy for me. And he's an absolute disruptor. We've talked about this in other episodes, Will. The 40 time is such a weird stat. Really, it's all about acceleration at the point of attack. And Tyndall has that in spades. I love everything about him. I love, at 6'1", he's big. He's not too big. He's lean. He's agile. He can do a lot of different things in terms of pass coverage and just blowing plays up. And you need that. And sometimes, with linebackers, what I love about Tyndall is he has the ability not just to prevent. There's linebackers that have sort of the ability to prevent a big play from happening, right? Where it's, hey, I got, I tackled someone at the line of scrimmage, or I deflected a pass, or I read things to sort of minimize, what that play could be. Tyndall's a guy, who can turn these sort of quick screens and these bubble screens and these lateral plays into a loss of 5, and it just totally disrupts a possession. And it totally disrupts momentum. And, when you talk about kind of game changers, and there's a handful of plays in every game where, a huge play kind of changes the whole complexion of how you sort of strategize and script the next 8 to 10 plays. And Tyndall has that home run ability. He's like that slugger in baseball who, hey, he may hit 230, 240, but he's going to hit 48 dingers in a year, and Tyndall is sort of that home run hitter for a linebacker.
Him and Smith are the 2 guys where it's like the situation will be fun to watch where those guys.
Yes,
exactly. Like if they go to like a Pittsburgh, a Baltimore, like one of those classic defense environments, like I would love to see where they go. Is there any other guys we haven't touched that you're excited about, my man?
Well, I think that what's interesting to me is, and it's so funny how you and I kind of converged on the same list just about. I think your 7, my 7, with the exception of maybe, we had maybe the order slightly different and the exception of one guy, it was all the same, which, again, as my father would say, either great minds think alike or fools seldom differ. It's one of the two, and maybe it's for our listeners to decide that. But to me, I think these guys really sort of separated themselves. But then I think at the linebacker position in this draft, I think there's a ton of value on the back end.
Oh, yeah.
If you sort of miss on one of the top 3 guys or one of these next 3 or 4 guys, don't worry too much, because I think that there is a lot of value on the back end. I think these guys are sort of, have separated themselves a little bit, but, the difference between a 5th round pick and a 7th round pick at the linebacker position, I think you're going to get just about the same amount of value. And so I think there's a lot of depth on the back end of this position. So not necessarily one guy for me that jumps out outside of this group, but I think the overall kind of critical mass of the position here, I think teams that have other needs earlier in the draft can address those needs, and then can also address some holes at linebacker very late in the draft here.
It's such an important position. It's the captain of your defense. You want to have the best personnel out there. Madman, this was so much fun once again, dude. What we're going to do a couple episodes next week, in the couple coming weeks. We got running backs to go, and we still got quarterbacks. So 2 very productive positions that I wouldn't rather do with anyone else, man.
Love it. Will the thrill. And, we got, no movie references this week, Will, but we got to keep the audience on their toes. We threw in a little basketball, a little Kenny Smith. We'll bring, don't worry, audience. The movie references are there. You just, you got to save a little bit in the holster week after week,
Yeah, I'm going to ruin that right now. Devin Lloyd might be the next Bobby Boucher if he keeps this up. So we got our guy right there. Madman, great to see you as always. Draft is in session. We